Welcome to Belief, Being, and Beyond with your host, Granddaughter Crow. Hi, everybody. Granddaughter Crow here, and it's time for another episode of Belief, Being, and Beyond. And I've got something very special for you today. Today, I have Terri Ann Heiman, and it is going to be so amazing. I have been on Terri's show, the Empowered Spirit Show, and you know what Terri does? She sets sacred space for the show and the guest. So, as a host, in honor to her, I am going to do the same thing. So awesome, everybody, wherever you are, just take a deep breath and relax into this space, into this time. I'm going to draw a circle around this space, around this time, declaring this space as sacred space and this time as a very sacred time. I'm going to set my ego to the outside so that I can be a clear conduit to bring forth spirit in this podcast as we have a wonderful discussion on bridging spirituality and work. Let the divine, as it reveals itself to you, bring messages to you, whether it's through our voices or whether it's through something that we say that inspires you. So let's get started. Terri Ann Heiman is an interfaith minister and spiritual counselor, a Reiki master teacher, soul reader, author, speaker, and podcaster. Like I said, I've been on her podcast, dedicated to supporting women navigating challenging transitions such as divorce or new beginnings and or whatever we're going through at this point in time. So through her empowered spirit programs, she equips them with the essential tools and techniques to rebuild their confidence and reconnect with their inner wisdom. People, that's so important. Our inner wisdom. We get a lot of external counsel, which is wonderful, but let it lead to our inner wisdom. We may talk a little bit about that. Moreover, Terri has been featured on ABC and has contributed to multiple articles to Reiki News Magazine. Her debut book, this is going to be fun. We won't talk about it, we may mention it a little bit, but Confessions of a Shower Tapper, right? The ultimate guide to living your purpose through EFT. It's available on Amazon. And in 2024, she was written about in the Woman's World magazine and was contributing author to Freddie Silva's book, Portals, Energetic Doorways to Mystical Experiences Between Worlds. She also hosts the Empowered Spirit podcast show, etc., and so forth. I could go on and on and on, but let's bring Terri Ann Heiman on. Say hi to everybody, Terri.
Hi, so grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What a wonderful time to be able to connect with other spiritual practitioners and to bring this information to the community so that they can be empowered. One thing I really do want to talk about today is in a world that we're living in, 2025 United States, need I say more? Um, we really need to, I don't know. For me, it's like I have to shift a little. I have to get more tools or really open up my tools, but really always remember not to hide my spirit and to actually bring it into my day-to-day activities. There's a whole saying, we're so spiritually minded that we're no earthly good. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about how we bridge spirituality into our day-to-day activity, into our work life, Terri.
Yeah, it is such an important thing right now. It really is. So I thank you for that. I find that so often we're just so busy. We're running around. We forget that we have this beautiful spiritual presence. We get caught in our ego. We don't take the time to set it aside like you did for us, right? And so we're just too busy. And also, too, many of us, get a little bit like, I can't say that or I can't tell them that. They hide the tarot cards in their desk, yet they want to read them, they want to use them. And even the word intuition, like you can say maybe trust your gut, but use intuition. And it's like, oh no, too woo. But I think that we really have to embrace where we are right now that we need these tools. We really do. And like you said, here we are in the United States. Things are a little wonky right now, and we're feeling a lot of disruption. We
Yeah.
are, whether it's
Yeah.
in your workplace, whether it's at home, whether it's in the whole political environment, everywhere. And so it's a really hard time. You know what? It's also hard to know who to trust. All the digital stuff going on. I know I got hacked recently. It's like, oh my gosh. And I thought I was like correcting it and I was making it worse. So there's so much out there. And there was something inside of me that kept saying, get off the phone, get off the phone, get off the phone. And luckily, I finally just said, okay, I've heard this 3 times in a row in my head, off the phone. Right. And yes, then I found the correct people to call and caught it in time. But it is a crazy world out there. And if we don't bring our tools wholeheartedly, our whole self, to work, to everything we do, it's going to be even harder. Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. And, there's also like little scares, like you said, should I say that? Am I going to get in trouble? What's going on? And I think a lot of spiritualists, whether they consider themselves to be a Reiki practitioner, a ceremonial magician, even a WITCH, which I love them, all of those people, it's almost like the community is having these little conversations around what do I say? And like, so as a spiritual leader, as an empowered spiritual leader who empowers other people, what is the stance that you would take in encouraging people at this moment to be able to do those things, put those works in practice? How do we keep our voice?
So important to keep our voice, especially right now. It really is such a great point, granddaughter. So I think the first and foremost thing that we can do is to be able to take the pause, especially when so much reaction energy is going on. It's like take the pause, take a deep breath, because right there we can begin to change whatever's going on within us, which is going to help us around us. And when we take that pause, we can connect to our spirit. I think that's first and foremost. And I know I was in a meditation prior to this today and with my Toltec group, right? And so it's like, what is that message for me coming in? And the very message was to continue to slow down. Because I slow down, I get the messages. And the other part of it, of that message was that you'll feel the joy in life, right? Because there's so much going on. It's like, oh, it's so much reaction, reaction. Oh my gosh, I can't believe, can't believe. First of all, we don't know what's going to happen. And if we all lose ourselves to that reaction energy, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of anxiety in the cosmic field. So we have to do our job to stay grounded. So no matter where you're showing up, at work, in a meeting, with a relationship, being really grounded, really present. I like to say, call in the higher self to keep you in that alignment. I know that's what I need to do. All right, higher self, we're going to walk together. We're going to kind of go through that, right? So that we can show up. Now, one of the things that I kind of fight, but yet it really is a valuable thing to think about, is that we do have to use the language of, say, corporate, if you're in the corporate world, especially. But sometimes you have to change your language a little bit so that you don't come off sounding too quote unquote, and I don't hit like this word, but I'll say it, too woo, right? So we sometimes have to use their language, yet we don't have to change how we feel and how we believe. Right. So maybe we don't always get to say, oh, trust your intuition, but you certainly can say, trust your gut. Right. So we might have to use a little bit of that language, especially as women, because it's so easy for us to be talked over. Right. And to be taken advantage of, or for someone to say, your idea after you said it, but nobody's listening. But when we can just stay in that sense of grounding, that was a big message for us today, too. It's like just be grounded constantly. Down south, here I am right now in Alabama, and we have a little saying, maybe you have it too, buckle up, buttercup. We need that sensitivity and beauty of the buttercup, but yet we need the strength to be grounded in Mother Earth right now. Yeah.
I love that because oddly enough, I was in meditation this morning and I got the same message. And this morning, I woke up at 3:33,
My
and
favorite number.
I woke up and I was like, "Oh, I want to light a candle and some incense and breathe." I didn't have like prayer requests and da 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 da. I was just like, so I got a little tea light candle. I have them on hand. Lit it, little stick of incense, and I just sat in the stillness of 3:33 in the morning, which is a very special time. And I heard, breathe, pay attention to your body. What do you need right now? What do you want? And I'm like, to breathe. And I love that message about taking the pause because what happens when we react versus proact, Terry? What happens when we
Yeah.
react versus proact?
We tend to get all over the place. We get into blame. We get into pointing that little finger, right? And we really don't take responsibility for our own energy, which is first and foremost really important. Right? Yeah. So it could be such a simple thing like before you start your meeting, it's like, let's just take a moment and everybody pause, take a breath, let's join our energy. Now, that doesn't sound too woo, but it's taking a moment. And what are we doing? We're bringing all the consciousness, just like you do with that beautiful sacred circle all around us, is bringing all that energy together versus jumping right in and everybody's in a different place and everybody's scrolling and not even present. Then we can all be present to what it is. And we're going to be more focused. We're going to get things done quicker, better. Yeah.
I
So it,
agree.
it really is simple things like that that we can do to show up really in that idea that we are spirit and we bring this together. We don't have to leave it at home. We can show up fully in who we are.
Like that you talk about you might have to change the language a little bit. And honestly, I do that when I'm talking one-on-one to different people from different places. I'll be like, "Oh, how do you say it in your language?" So it's not like I am surrendering or discounting myself, but I love this idea. I used to work in international corporate America for like 12 years and but I could see walking into a meeting, a corporate meeting, with all types of people and maybe even leading the meeting and saying, "Oh, wow, it's so great to be here with you now. We are going to focus all of our energy, all of our attention onto this topic. Let's be creative and dynamic and get some things done." That's a prayer in itself, wouldn't you think?
Oh, I so agree. I love that. Yes, because it is. It's meeting them where they are. It's using their language, yet we're taking that time to be present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that depending on what age group you are, people, I'm a Gen X, so when I was growing up, the world was a little bit different, but a lot of people in that generation, and maybe even in younger generations, it would be like Sunday church. That's it. Couple hours, then you could go out for fried chicken or whatever. And segregating this idea of spiritual thinking, spiritual food for the soul to a 2-hour window on a Sunday morning after your Saturday night that you've been staying up late watching movies, Netflix, whatever you're doing. And spreading that concept over to go, like you said, I am spirit, and I'm going to show up not just on Sunday from 10 till 12 or 9:30 to 11:30, and then you can hit the buffet, but to do it every single day. How can we do things like that? What are some tangible practices that we could remind ourselves on a day-to-day basis to breathe or stay center that we can integrate into our life, even if we're in corporate America in the Bible Belt?
I think there's so many ways. And you know what? I have to kind of giggle a little bit because I don't even think it's once a day we need to meditate right now or taking one pause. I think it's multiple times, right? And just starting to make that habit like, okay, before I go to work, before I turn on my computer, as my computer's turning on, let me just take a moment and presence my energy. And we ask ourselves, like, okay, where's my mind today? How many thoughts? Is it busy? Breathe. What are my emotions? What am I feeling? Because if I'm not aware of how I'm feeling, any reaction is not going to be fair, right?
Right.
Where's my body doing? Like, where am I stuck? Where am I tense? Where's the pain? And we also ask, like, where's my spirit? How am I today? And it doesn't take long. I'm not saying we have to spend a half hour, 3 hours, anything like that. No, within 5 minutes, you can do that in center, then go to work. I mean, it's like a place of here. Now let me go to work. And then perhaps you've got all this stuff going on. You brought in a lot of people's energy in the middle of the day. And the same thing maybe at lunch before you start again. And I even say before you go home, like gratitude. Okay, I'm done for the day. I'm leaving this here because then that's going to help you not take it with you. And then all that, whatever aggravation, anxiety, stress you had at work, do you really want to go home with that? I lived in New York for many years. That's where I did most of my education, raised my kids. And I would ride the Long Island Railroad back and forth. And I was in the jewelry industry. And I would be like, sometimes like, oh my gosh, platinum. And oh, did I mess it up? And I'd be in tears and I'd leave and I'd get on the train, take that pause, be really grateful for these hands, right? And what I was creating, but also to run a little Reiki. And by the time I would get home, I was ready for my kids. I didn't have all that stuff, right? And I think we need to be really mindful when we do that. And maybe that means for you between meetings, between different contracts you're working on or different relationships that you have, right? I know one of my clients was telling me, oh my gosh, I used one of the techniques. I'm like, what did you mean? She goes, everybody was like kind of talking over everybody. Nobody was listening. I just said, hey, wait a minute. Let's all take a breath. And everybody got quiet. So there we go. We redirect the energy. We come back to center rather than right. All that
Yeah.
discord is another better word for it, I don't think. But right. So I think it's things like that. Now there are other tools. I mean, even like you mentioned, tapping. Tapping is an amazing tool. It works on the amygdala of the brain, lowers cortisol, and immediately it can bring your stress level down and bring you right back into the present. Overwhelm, anxiety, anything. And it's just simple points that you tap on, and that will help you to calm and center, right? Taking breaths, using Reiki. I use Reiki all the time. Just even sitting there, like I said, on the train, you wouldn't even know what I was doing, right? Just like, oh my gosh, right? So these are tools you can learn for yourself, which is really what I've based my practice on, empowering you so that you don't always have to just come to me, right? It's great what people did, right? And I might have a better practice, right? But I am empowering you to take these tools and learn them for yourself. And then every day you can show up with them. We need them. And you know what? Honestly, science is proving everything that we as spiritualists talk about right now. They're showing it. They're showing it in the brain. They're showing scans. You can see the difference. Pre-meditation, after meditation, pre-Reiki, after Reiki, especially tapping, right? The tapping solution, they have so many now documented scans of the brain to show the results. And now even, your watches, your smartwatches, you can even do that with your smartwatch and see that heart rate change. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I love that. So I mean, I haven't had anybody on the show yet talk about tapping. And here at Belief Being and Beyond, we have a very widespread audience, and I love to bring different belief systems so that we can figure out what we want to, our little buffet of, ooh, that sounds good. So you wrote a book about tapping. Would you
I
talk
did.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
all the confessions, the shower tap.
Confessions of a Shower Tapper. Yes, you mentioned I'm an interfaith minister, so confess. I kept confessing, saying, "Okay, I tap in the shower. I confess." And one of my teachers and mentors, Ted Robinson, who is no longer in body, he said that's a great title for a book. I'm like, "Okay, I'm doing it." But that's kind of where it came from. But it's 21 issues. I was going to look for a picture. 21 issues really that we all go through to living our purpose. I can't do it. I'm not good enough. All my work stuck in my computer. No one loves me. All these different issues. But we do. We have these tapping points, and I give them into you in the book. But Gary Craig, who was the one that really simplified emotional freedom technique, EFT tapping, it's all similar names. He figured out if we hit these certain points, we're getting all the points that we need, works on the amygdala, which lowers cortisol, which brings us into the present and helps us to rewire our brain. So there's a little difference in this technique because we bring up the negative emotions. Now you hear people go, "Oh, I don't want to bring them up." No, no, but you know what? If they're stuck in us, we might as well bring them up. It's like the shadow, right? We want to bring them up. Those taboo things. Hello, right? And so when we bring them up and bring them out, we tap them until we don't have that charge on them anymore. Once we get that charge down, then we can rewire with the positive affirmations. But we can't really go positive if we're still charged, if we still have this like, ugh, right? This energy to us. So it works on everything. I use it constantly. I really do. Whatever anxiety, fear right now, and you start to recognize, sometimes you'll like laugh, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. It's so silly, and then we get to the deep rooted stuff through the tapping. Yeah.
I
And there's a
love.
little setup phrase where you have to first acknowledge right here at the karate chop point. It's an acknowledgement. Like, even though I have this anxiety, I choose to love myself because we're acknowledging the right and left hemisphere. We're acknowledging the ego, actually. So even though I have this disruption, this shadow, I choose to accept where I am. And then you go point to point. Now, when you work with a practitioner, you're repeating and they're helping you to really go deep within yourself to what those old imprints are. And then I go a little further working in past life through the Akashic realm. Like, what are the past life imprints that we keep going through? So you can go all that way, even deeper and deeper. I mean, I'm doing some of my own deep work right now. We're in the winter, we're in our ancestral energies and that deep visioning. So I'm working on some of those old imprints that are so deep inside, seeing changes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, listeners, I just want to say www. Terri Ann Heiman, TerriAnn Heiman, HEIMAN.com, where you can find more of this wonderful information. And I will also have all of Terry's social media, YouTube channel, so many fun things. It's interesting, Terry, because I have been having a little bit of stomach issues, and I am trying to assign a story to it. I'm like, oh, did I eat something? Oh, am I just energetically trying to digest 2025 in the USA? Oh, am I da 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 da, And this morning at about 8:30, so after 3:33 waking up, about 6:30 I'm like, oh, it's time to take a little nap ski again. So I take my little nap ski and I wake up and it's about 8:15 and I kind of wake up anxious. I just had anxiety. And I'm like, why am I anxious? And my slow paused mind, the pause, not the reactive mind, but the proactive mind, said to me, why do you need to create a story around it? Why can't you just sit with the energy? Just sit with it and allow it to move and see what comes up and let it go, and see what comes up and let it go. It could be residual energy. You don't have to have a reason that you have to focus on all day long. And within 20 minutes, I cycled that energy and I was like, I know I'm going to be talking to Terry today, and I know that she taps. So I'm like, I just started tapping my pupils. So I don't even know what that means, but I was just tapping my pupils. And within, like I said, I cycled through the majority of it within about 5 to 7 minutes. But the buildup and then the letdown took about 20 minutes, and now I'm fine. What
Yeah.
would you say happened in that? What would you say about what I just said?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, I had a similar moment Saturday when I came into the kitchen to get my coffee and I'd had a beautiful sleep. I do a lot of meditation, waking up, similar, right? And I came in the kitchen and I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I feel so depressed. And then I sat there in the kitchen and thought, this isn't all my energy. This isn't all my anxiety. I'm pulling in. I'm pulling in from the universe. So that was very helpful for me, first and foremost, to realize like I don't need the story, like you said, but I'm actually pulling in a lot of energy. And so I need to be more protective of my energy, not less. And especially like when I wake up, or I mean, when I'm sleeping, like really make sure that I'm able to manage all that energy. So I have some techniques for that because it was not all mine, but it does show me that even as great empaths, like we pull this in without meaning to, even though I know I'm sensitive to other people, but from humanity and in our sleep time. So I just wanted to acknowledge I woke up the other day too feeling that. And so now I'm a little more aware of it. I've got my I've got my black obsidian from Teotihuacan, Mexico underneath my pillow, right? And so it helps me to then really stay grounded. And my dreams have been better and I've been waking up better. So that's one of the things. But as we tap, we are working on meridian points of the body. I forget which are which. I was seeing if I could find it really quick, but there are certain points. But as Gary Craig, the founder, recognized, like if we just tap on these points, you're going to hit what you need. Versus the original, it was called like touch field therapy or something. Um, Stephen Callahan, I think was his name. That was the original originator of this kind of therapy. But you had to go look up the points, and you had to look it up for each person. So then Gary Craig came along and simplified it. And so if you touch these points, and even as you were doing, you just randomly chose one, we're starting to activate the amygdala of the brain, which is lowering cortisol, which is bringing us back into the present moment. Because what is us as humans? What are we worried about? Something that happened in the past? Right? We're remembering it. We wake up, we check our emails, we check the social media. Oh, yeah, what happened yesterday that's going to now trigger us? Or we're worried about the future. How am I going to pay this? Oh, no, tax season's coming up. All those things we get triggered. But when we're in the present moment, which is what I acknowledge in the kitchen, wait a minute, I am okay. I'm about to make coffee. I can get dressed. I can walk around. I can dress myself as senior citizen, right? That's a big thing when you go to the doctor these days, right? But the point is like I acknowledge right here in the present moment, I'm okay. Otherwise, we take that anxiety with that stomach ache, and then we go to the doctor, and then we're given medicine, and we're not given the opportunity to really sit with it like you expressed, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
because there are big emotions coming in. I mean, one of the principles with tapping that Gary Craig taught was underneath the physical ailment is unresolved emotional issue,
Yeah.
right? So the emotional issue is look what's going on in the world. It's hard for anybody to digest life right now, much less food, right? Yeah. So that's part of it. And as you talk about in your work, in your book, and what we talked about on the show too with the shadows, this is the part we embrace. But with the tapping, we can get to it a little quicker and it starts to rewire the brain. And then you start to recognize, like for me, some of the anxiety, some of the old lineage mind, Ashkenazic, the struggle, the guilt, the worry. This is an old imprint. I recognize this is yesterday's energy. I recognize this is an old habit. I choose not to go there. I choose to be present. So as we start to acknowledge the shadow, we start to then be able to rewire it so I don't have to wake up that way every day.
I
So
love it.
these are the ways in which the tapping, it's just amazing, right? So yes, you can check out my book. You can find it. I do private sessions, but I will just offer just a huge insight for this, that the tapping solution, who's kind of taken over for Gary Craig, he's much older now and he got very popular. The tapping solution has a free summit coming up. And you can get tons of information just by listening. Great teachers, and they're really, you can buy it. I think that's the only thing they try to sell is the buying, but all the interviews, they're just pure information. And some of my teachers, some of the people I've worked with are on it. But to me, it's one of the best techniques right now for anxiety and fear. Yes, I love Reiki. Reiki is good for personal, calming, loving energy. But if you want to rewire your brain and get out of the limits and beliefs, it's amazing what it can do for you. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. And so you actually do, speaking of Reiki, you actually do teach Reiki and help people to get certified, as well as send Reiki and do one-on-one mentoring. Tell us a little bit more about how an individual can work directly with you beyond listening to your podcasts and things.
Yeah. Thank you for that because my podcast does give a lot of information. And like you said, I always tune in. First and foremost, I offer a free discovery call. So you can go on and I can send you the link if you need it, but you can go on and just let's just chat, like get to know me. Like I'm real. I'm available, right? And if you are serious, I do ask you how serious you are, right? About wanting to make the changes, right? Let's be fair with each other's time. And we could talk about what would be beneficial for you. Maybe it is just a session, or maybe you want to learn how to set up your own spiritual practice and learn these tools. So I do have private mentoring, and now I have several different private mentoring. Maybe you aren't trained in Reiki and you want to have that. Maybe you want to do a little bit more deep soul work. We can work that way. Maybe you even want to learn about the radiance. I have a radiant light program, right? I even have one that I love called Shapeshifters. Like, let's get in shape. I'm an emotional eater and I use tapping for that. Like, let's get to what's in that gap of why we say we want this, or what's that emotional energy holding us and connecting us to food and to emotions, right? So that's one of my favorite. It's a lot of fun. It gets into a little shamanism techniques as well. We get into a lot of them because there's so much in that whole emotional eating, right? And I even talk about it in my other book too. It's just like, like, oh, it must be because I'm overweight. Nobody likes me, right? It's like, come on, how silly is that? But when we have those deep beliefs, we believe it, right? And their imprints. When I came back to Birmingham, it had been 35 years, and I saw a woman in our community that I knew from practically like kindergarten. She said, oh, I remember you. Aren't you the fat one? 35 years later. And boy, did that put me right back to that time period of being insecure.
Yeah, of
And that's
course.
what happens. Those are called imprints, energy imprints. Yeah. So I help you work through those. And that's actually one of the most fascinating for me, especially in the Akashic realm. Want to learn how to access your own records in the realm? I can show you how. We start by learning intuition, learning about our empath energy, learning about the aura. So I do have a little method to my madness, how I go from A to Z, right? And how we build it and all. But there are many ways to work with me. There are.
I love it. And one of the benefits, like it's a huge benefit to listen to all of the information, but one of the biggest, biggest benefits, if you have the time, energy, resources, and will, to do a one-on-one, it becomes personalized to you. It becomes personalized. So you're like, oh, well, I'm Granddaughter Crow. And I now understand my energy and where it tends to slide down the rabbit hole. And I now understand, and so that's a really big benefit of working one on one with all the tools. I want to kind of circle back because we started this saying bridging spirituality with work and then spirit in everyday life. And so we talked about spirituality in work, like corporate America, or even if you work at a factory or a farm or whatever. But then you kind of started mentioning, oh, what about if you're an emotional eater or something like that? So it goes beyond just work life, it can go into all aspects of your life, bringing spirituality to your dinner table. What would you say
Yes.
about that?
Yeah, I think that's really important because I know I struggled all my life with emotional eating. Now, I will say today I am much better. I'm not saying I don't overeat or emotionally eat, but when I do, I catch myself and I ask, why are we overeating? Why do we just buy a bag of pretzels and want to eat them all?
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, I'm feeling a little lonely. I'm feeling a little isolated. I'm feeling a little separated out. But then I can tap myself back into it by simply acknowledging it is helping as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's so valuable to help us understand. And even just sitting down, yes, my mother used to say, you eat too fast, you eat too fast. So when we presence that energy and we can really take the time, we're going to have overall better. How many times you go eat this amazing meal and you don't even pay attention to eating, and all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I just ate the whole meal and didn't even realize. Yeah. So I think that's really important. And that comes into mindfulness. We have informal, formal mindfulness, but even in our just everyday life, like you're saying, like being really mindful. And that's one of the things I'm really focusing. And that was a message in my meditation too. Slow down even more,
Yeah.
even more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when we can just really be aware of the energy, it just makes us so much more aware of our life and what we're doing. And no, I don't want to keep repeating the same mistakes, right? And I can get way ahead of myself. Our spirit generally is. It's way out there. It's already watching, right? It's already looking at it. But when we can come right back and really be in alignment, time shifts, everything shifts. Yeah. I'm not saying it's like I won't have any problems because Lord knows I got them, but I do my work. And I tell my students that, like, I'm not perfect. You want a perfect teacher? But I will do my work and I will meet you where you are to help you do your work. And I think that's really important. But in our everyday life, there's so many things that we deal with. And growing up, I mean, my mother used to say, "Oh, quit being so sensitive," right? And one of the ways she tried to help me with my weight problem, I was the fat kid in the family. I'll just admit it. But she took me to a fat doctor, quote unquote, that gave me diet pills. Pre-adolescence diet pills. I love my mother dearly. I do. I lived with her the last 5 years, but that's how they dealt with it back then, right? Did I learn anything? No, I didn't learn anything until I went off to college and started having to cook for myself and realizing, wait a minute, what is this about? And it still took me many years. It did. But I do feel that having the ability to even say I'm an emotional eater is really powerful because it
Exactly.
embraces the shadow again. Yeah. But now we have tools and we can cut the gap. I mean, it's really amazing when we start to realize, like, oh my God, why am I always going for sugary donuts in the morning? We realize, oh, my dad used to take me out for sugary donuts. So I think about my dad. So we want to separate the love for your dad with the idea, wait a minute, that's a sugary donut. We don't need the sugary donut to feel the love for the dad. So we start to get in the gap and separate those
Yeah.
out. And one of the things I say is we eat for nutrition, not for emotions, right? Yeah. So that's kind of how you work with that. But that's part of our everyday life. And even like, too, like you can even take it to like just even being able, for women where we are right now, being able to speak up. Because what's happening? We're being smashed down again. But wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hello. I have something to say. And we have to take that reserve, be grounded, and right here in the deepest part of our heart say, hello, I do have something to say. Especially for those difficult conversations. I was just having this conversation with my daughter. She had to have a difficult conversation. She says, same thing. It's better to go ahead and face it head on than to put it off because it just builds and builds and gets worse, right? So feeling that, and I like to say, spirit to spirit, deep in your heart, connect with the greater source. Bring in the higher self. And this is something once you do it, it's just like becomes automatic, but then we're showing up whole and complete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to applaud you for talking about emotional eating because I think that we're in a day and age where there's so many people out there that's like, I'm so glad she said that because I didn't want to admit it to myself, or oh, I'm emotionally doom scrolling, or oh, I'm emotionally binge watching Netflix, or I'm emotionally drinking too much wine, or I'm emotionally shopping, fill in the blank, fill in the blank, people. What is it that is reactive to the energy? And how do we do that? We pause and understand, oh, that was dad's donut. I love dad, and I'm going to light a candle to dad, talk about my dad today, give him a hug, whatever it is, and then eat a granola bar. Or, I mean, separate those out. And
Drink
I
water.
drink water,
Water
more
is the
water.
processor of energy. Yes.
Say that again. Water is the
Water is our processor of energy, right? And so there's even a tapping. I eat for nutrition. You know how many times I've tapped on that? I eat for nutrition. I drink water for my emotions. I eat for nutrition, right? But water is the processor of emotions. Yeah.
This is amazing.
Flushes the body, moves through the kidneys, right? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's a bumper sticker, people. That's a bumper sticker. I absolutely love that. So, as we're starting to wrap up, is there anything else that you want to say? And is there any upcoming things that are going on in the world of Terri Ann Heiman?
Yes, there is. I'm so excited. It's kind of like a kind of thing because it hasn't been announced, but it has to do with my podcast. I have a new show coming out called Soul Messages. It's going to be on Etheric TV, which will be a live TV streaming. It is still kind of under wraps because it hasn't launched, but it
Will,
will.
but
But
it's
it's going to be, my program is going to be along with others other content creators. Just going to be about 50 different programs. But I am going to actually do a little bit of like teaching. How do we find soul messages? Where do they come from? How can we begin to access it? So there will be a little teaching and examples given in it, but I'm very excited. I had a pilot. It's like a whole big deal for me. And it's like kind of the next level up, which is really funny because last year, I don't quite remember when it was. I think it was last fall. I had an astrologer on the show and she was late and she felt so bad. She goes, "Let me give you a reading." And so I said, "Okay, sure, give me a reading. Who doesn't want an astrology reading?" And she
Right?
said to me, "You have to get visible." I'm like, "What? I'm visible." She goes, "No, you have to get visible. You need to take your podcast and put it on video." I'm like, "I can't do that." But it was so powerful in my chart. I said, I need to listen. And so I followed that advice. And so I started doing the podcast now on video. And from there, that's where the pilot was created from. I have to change it a little bit just for them. But you know what? It was like, yeah, taking that guidance and actually acting on it. And now, yeah, I'm very excited. It should be out in March. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully we'll get it all together. It should be out in March. I'm not sure when they're launching it. They're doing some testing right now to get it all up in there. But it's actually what I understand. It's like kind of a new phase in TV broadcasting. Yeah.
Nice.
So big, huge up curve for me. Yeah. But I'm very excited and I can't wait to bring it forward and been working on it. Yeah.
Where can
But other than
people
that, I mean, my work, my mentoring, all of those things are always ongoing. Yeah.
Good. Where can people follow you to keep tabs on this new adventure that you're going into? Like, should they follow you on social network? Of course, again, terriannheiman.com, but where else can we follow you?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a little tricky question for me right now, just because of what's going on in the world at large.
Yeah.
Some of the platforms I am changing, and not to get too crazy here, but definitely my website. I have recently started on Substack. That's another place.
Right.
In the past, it's been Instagram, but that could change. Yeah. But YouTube, I'm building the YouTube. But you know what? Like I said, reach out. You can find me and my website. I do try to keep up to date. And for now, I will say I am on Instagram at Terri Ann Heiman, but that could change. So,
I
yeah,
think that that could change for a lot of us. Terry, thank you
yeah.
for, being one of the first voices that come forward on my show to say, hey, things are changing, people. We may have to meet up, down the street, basically,
I
but
know. I
we
mean,
still shine. Yep, we still shine. We still shine.
I really want to feel that integrous part of me. Is that the right word, integrous? But be in integrity, right? Like, I'm not so sure I believe in those principles. But yes, like, oh, but it's for your business. But
Yeah.
I don't know. So it could change, and I think we all need to have a little consciousness right now about that. And there are many ways, and there are new platforms every day, coming forward. But you can find me on YouTube. That'll be there for a while now. I think that's a good place. And Instagram, like I said. But my website, I'm trying to use it more and more. Yeah.
Love
Thank
it.
you.
I love
And
it.
actually, I will say if you go to my website, I do have a free gift and it's download an ebook on energetic sensitivity.
Okay, I'm
So it
gonna
gives you
go
some
there.
great tips to really increase your energetic sensitivity. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to download that book. I am going to download that book. So, Terry, thank you so much. We talked about bringing spirituality into your day. We talked about tapping. We talked about pausing, people. Let spirit tell you, because spirit is talking to you all the time. And that although Terry and I are spiritual leaders, what we're here to do is empower your soul to hear your inner wisdom. Thank you so much, Terry, for being on the show.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. People, thank you so much for tuning in once again to another episode of Belief Being and Beyond. Like, subscribe, and share. Also, if you're listening to this on a podcast, scroll down. You can text the show. Yes, you can text the show. I will get your text. I won't know who you are, so you can put your name or stay anonymous, but I'd love to hear from you, hear what you think about this episode and our other episodes coming up. But blessed be people. I love you, and we'll see you on the flippity flip.